So welcome everybody to our Regional Council meeting of October 28, 2015. All members are present today. Before moving into closed session, Council also considered any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda. Mr. Clerk, can you please advise whether any declarations of interest were made by members?
Mayor Jeffrey and members of Council, there were 2 declarations of interest stated at the start of the meeting under this portion of the agenda. One from Councillor Moore. A declaration was made in regard to part of report item I-1, which is a report from Brampton's Integrity Commissioner, in that the complaint deals with herself. And a second declaration was made by Councillor Gibson, again in regard to a part of report item I-1, in that that report from the Integrity Commissioner deals with himself. Those were the 2 declarations.
Thank you. Our next item is I-2, a report from our Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Robert Swayze, in regards to a complaint against Councillor Sprovieri. Mr. Swayze is here to answer any questions from members. Do any members have questions of Mr. Swayze? Councillor Moore.
I don't have any questions of Mr. Swayze specifically. I just wanted to move receipt of the report, Madam Mayor.
Going to report here. I believe are you moving the recommendations as well, Councillor Moore?
No, I'm moving receipt of the report, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Swayze, for coming today to deal with this issue. Madam Mayor, I've handed out a package of emails and a questionnaire and just general information regarding this issue. So I just, for council information only, this is only for information. I'm not trying to influence council in any way. This is purely information that is based on this, that I believe Mr. Swayze used to come to his conclusion. So I'd like to go through this and have some questions. It may take longer than 5 minutes, so I will ask, and you can appreciate how important this matter is to me, not because of the 2 months penalty, but my 27-year perfect, basically, record. That's what I'm concerned about. The 2 months, it's not an issue. I'll just go for a holiday down in Mexico for 2 months and enjoy the summer, the fall, the winter weather down there. So if council decides I got to pay, I will pay. No problem. But before I do, I'd like council to be aware of the information that I put together. So I'm just going to go through this. Now we could do it 2 ways. We can. I know that Mr. Swayze was given the package through Councillor Miles and Mr. Zuick and to you, so you had a bit of a look at it. Maybe you should be able to answer any question here, because it's all related to the emails that you used to come to your conclusion, Mr. Swayze. So you should have all the information, all the material with you that made you draw your conclusion. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, through you, I've read your questions. I've been given your questions, and some of them, I'm afraid, would require me to ask council to go in camera. Councillor Sprovieri can't come in camera for this matter.
Well, let's. Well, Mr. Swayze, before you go, I'm asking you. You have the material with you that you're able to answer the questions?
I have my entire file.
Okay, great. That's all I want to know. Now, if we come to a question where you feel that it has to be dealt in camera, you can go. I'll stay here, and you can go with council. But let's get to the question.
Councillor, there are a litany of dates And I would have to refer to my file to give you those dates. This is your questions.
Wow.
I would have to refer to my file to give you those dates, and I don't think council needs to waste that kind of time.
Well, Mr. Swayze, all the dates are on the emails attached. All the material the emails and the stories in the newspaper that you use to draw your conclusions are all included in this little package. It's not very much. So let me go to if we come to one where you say, I need to refer to we'll refer that to perhaps another time, and then you can bring back. But in the meantime, Madam Mayor, I'd like to start with the questions.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I suggest that the clerk record the questions. I believe you have a copy of his email.
Yes.
It may be necessary to ask council to go in camera.
That's fine.
To answer those questions.
That's fine.
Councillor Sprovieri, would you let Mr. Swayze finish? Is there anything else you want to say, Mr. Swayze?
Beg your pardon?
Anything else you wanted to add? I feel like there's a dialogue going on. You're speaking.
Yes, I'd like to make a few comments. Thank you for the
Please,
suggestion.
you have the floor, and then I will come back to Councillor Sprovieri.
Madam Mayor,
Well, can I just finish my statement? I didn't finish. So, Madam Mayor,
Councillor
just for the
Sprovieri,
record.
would you please go through the chair
Oh,
and ask permission before you start talking?
Well, I had the chair. My name's right there.
I see that your name is there, but we do have somebody here to do a presentation.
I understand
And
that.
then we can go to your questions.
But I have.
I'm
This is not a
limiting
question.
your asking
This
questions.
is a point of information that I must make before we go on. Most likely I will not partake in the vote because that would be a conflict of interest. But I will go through the questions and then remove myself when whether it be in camera, whether it be a vote, I'll remove myself from that process. But I need to ask the questions first. Okay, now, Mr. Swayze.
Madam Mayor, may I make my presentation?
I think you will be interrupted if I let you do your presentation, so I'm going to let Mr. Sprovieri ask his questions.
Good, thank you. Then you can make your presentation. So, Mr. Swayze. Going to, so you found me guilty of pretty well that I contravened the closed session protocol and released confidential information to the media. Is that correct? Is that what
My
you found me guilty of?
my presentation would have been a little bit more
Well, just
accurate
answer
than
yes or
that.
no, please. I'm asking the questions now.
I understand that.
And so what's the answer, yes or no?
The answer is yes, I found you to have been in conflict with the code of conduct.
With contravening the in-camera and closed session protocol.
No, you are required to follow the rules of disclosure in regard to litigation considered in camera. You were given rules of disclosure by both the legal department on numerous occasions, I'm advised.
Okay, Mr. Swayze,
you didn't follow those rules.
We're going to come to that. You're going to tell me what the disclosures were along the way. So let's start with Mr. Rostiai's report. Do you know why Rostiai was hired by council at the cost of over $300,000? Do you know why council hired him to do what?
I don't
when he
know.
was hired?
I wasn't privy to that. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, wouldn't you have, because you referred to your judgment, you mentioned Mr. Rostiai's name in that, you didn't investigate or research what he was
Councillor Sprovieri,
doing?
I think he's answered the question. Can you just go to the
Okay,
questions?
so
I think
you
he's
don't
answered
know.
them.
Okay. Do you know if Mr. Rostiai addressed any of the questions submitted to him by members of council in his report?
No, I wasn't present. I wasn't present.
You don't know
meeting.
that either?
No.
So next question. Can you provide council, the issue of Nelson Street, can you provide council the date when legal staff informed council in closed session that the Nelson Street lease would be extended to 2019?
I don't recall.
Okay. Next question. Mrs. Swayze, can you provide the date of when legal staff informed council in closed session that the extended lease on Nate Nelson was connected to the Southwest Quadrant project?
If I had made my presentation, I would have explained
No,
to
just
you
answer the
that not
question,
everything
please,
needs to
please.
be in camera.
Pardon me?
Not everything that you, your behavior
Mr. Sway,
encompass,
just answer
not
my
all of
question.
that needs to be in camera.
I asked you a simple question. Just say yes or no.
No.
Can you provide, was there a date? Can you tell us when staff told us or informed us that the extended lease of 8 Nelson Street was connected to the Southwest Quadrant project?
I don't recall.
Okay. Can you also provide council the email from the acting CAO regarding her gag order not to respond to members of council that was marked confidential? So in other words, that email that which is here in the package, the email that the acting CAO sent to all members of council on let's go to the package here. Okay,
It's part of the complaint.
it's on August 25th, 2013. Here's a copy. You got it in your package. It doesn't say anywhere there where it's in a confidential on that email. Does it say anywhere that informed members of council there was confidential
It
information?
was an order to staff not to discuss any matter relating to the lawsuit.
So was that a confidential memo?
That's absolutely a confidential and...
Where's it marked there? I don't see confidential marked on it.
It's not marked confidential, but it's, you should have
Councillor
assumed it
Sprovieri,
was.
please don't argue with Mr.
Well,
Swayze.
I'm
You've
asking-
asked a question, I think
Okay.
he's answered it. Move on.
In the same package, Mr. Swayze, you'll see a sample, which I have to say, from Mr. Zuick, where he sent a memo to members of council just recently, and it's in your package, and it's from Mr. Zuick, and it's marked confidential and subject to solicitor and client privilege. So to me, this is what, when I read this told me that this was confidential and was not to be shared with anyone. So that I understood. But Ms. Ball's email, there's nowhere there where it says that I have to keep that confidential. It doesn't say anywhere confidential. So
May I
one
ask you a
says
question?
confidential, one does not.
May I ask you a question related to that?
No, I'm asking the questions,
I
please.
see.
I'm asking the questions. Okay? You had your chance to ask me questions when we met a couple of weeks ago.
I did.
Yes, you did. So now it's my turn to ask the questions. Okay. Where do we go next? The next question, the mayor's notification. It's in here. You made reference to it in your report. Mayor's notification on page 2. Can you tell us the date when the mayor notified me in closed session and informed me that she would lodge a complaint against me with the integrity commissioner?
I don't recall the date, but it's part of the complaint. It's one of the attached emails.
Okay, so there was an email, but is it marked confidential on there? Is the email marked confidential?
I don't believe so.
So then, okay, so it's not confidential then? It wasn't a confidential memo. That's what I've been trying to arrive at.
I think
Okay, now just say, was it
you are
confidential?
obligated not to
Was-
disclose
was
that
it-
to the
was-
press. Every
Pardon me?
one of those emails, you are obligated not to disclose them to the
That's-
press.
Mr. Swayze, I have in your package here what the roles of council and responsibilities and oath. There's a copy there. It says right there. I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. Then, there's also a sheet in there that says it's the council's mandate and responsibilities to represent the public and to consider the well-being and interest of the municipality, to ensure the accountability and transparency of the operation of the municipality, including to maintain including the activities of the senior management of the municipality, and to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality. This is my responsibility. This was my oath of office.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go on with the questions. So you're interpreting that I'm supposed to take orders from staff, but as you know,
So
I'm
you're
not
taking orders from staff. You're
I-
protecting
I-
the corporation from a lawsuit, sir.
Mr. Swayze, I am not an employee of...
Counselor, can I ask that you at least, if you ask a question, that you have the courtesy to let
Through
Mr.
the chair.
Swayze
Through the chair.
please answer it and let him finish
Okay.
his answer, because I think he's being
Well,
respectful of you.
He's not answering the question. He's trying to
I understand he's not
interpret,
answering the way you want him
yeah,
to,
no,
but
no,
I think
no.
you need to
I'm just
be
wanting him to answer the question, yes or no.
respectful of Mr. Swayze.
So I'm asking Mr. Swayze, was the mayor's memo that notified me that she was going to put a complaint, that she was putting a complaint against me, was that in a confidential memo?
It may not have been marked
Okay,
confidential.
thank you. I think that's what we're talking about, whether it was confidential
no,
or whether it was...
no, we're not
enclosed-
talking
No,
about that.
after you could have your say. Right now, you could have your... But right now, answer me the question.
So Councillor Sprovieri, what I'm going to suggest you do is that you just raise your questions, and I'm going to let Mr. Swayze respond at the end, because it seems to be getting into a bit of a debate.
Okay,
So
I will
please just do your questions.
Well, he's
Thank
the
you,
one
Madam
that's
Mayor.
trying to get into a
No,
debate.
no, I
I'm asking
think
the
what you're
question.
doing is you're engaging him and
All right.
wanting to argue. You
All right.
raise your questions,
Okay,
and
let me
Mr.
ask the
Swayze will be
question.
presenting after you're finished.
Okay. Mr. Swayze, can you... Where are we going here? Okay. Can you provide counsel the memorandum from the acting CAO where it was marked confidential, the memorandum from the CAO that was marked confidential, retaining to the gag order that it was printed. So that memo that the CAO issued, was that a confidential? Was that marked confidential? Basically, what I'm asking you. Was it
I
marked
don't
confidential?
believe it was marked confidential.
It was or not?
I don't believe it was marked
Okay, thank you.
confidential.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not used to the. I watch the lawyer on TV, and I know how they.
Councillor, are you nearly finished the questions?
No, I'm not, ma'am.
Okay, so I don't want you to extrapolate and tell us
okay.
whether you're a lawyer or not. Just finish the questions, please.
So, Mr. Swayze, can you point out to council where the Ensola lawsuit is mentioned by me in any of the material provided to you by the mayor? So whatever material that she provided to you to make your decision, was there any, did I mention the Ensola lawsuit anywhere?
You said in one email that how does 8 Nelson Street have anything to do with the Enzola lawsuit?
Right, that's the
That
one.
was a question that you
Okay.
asked.
I asked that question.
Right.
Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that one?
No, yeah, you did answer it. You said that I did mention it when I asked the question, how is it connected? That's what I wanted to hear, because I know I asked that question. So, Mr. Swayze, you indicated in your report that you have been assisted by Mr. Steiber, the lawyer who is assisting the city to defend the Ensola lawsuit against the city. So, would you say that Mr. Steiber has an inherent conflict of interest and should not have been involved in assisting you in your investigation?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
He
thank
is
you.
the best judge of the impact you had on the lawsuit with the
Okay,
emails that you sent.
Okay, you said no. Fine. So I'm saying, just stop and think this out. Imagine that Mr. Steiber's defense of the Ensola lawsuit is not going very well for him. Would it not be convenient for him to say that anything I say, that which is connected to the Southwest Quadrant asserting his case?
That's
No?
Through you, Madam Chair,
absurd.
Yeah?
I have let the conversation go quite broadly today without interrupting Councillor Sprovieri. But Councillor Sprovieri is raising issues of the SWQ lawsuit. If Councillor Sprovieri wants to discuss the impacts on the SWQ lawsuit, we should go in camera to discuss those impacts. If Councillor Sprovieri wants to talk about Stephen Stieber and the handling of the SWQ lawsuit, we should go in camera to do so. Mr. Stieber should be in camera to answer Mr. Sprovieri's questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So all I'm trying to get at, Madam Mayor, is to ask Mr. Swayze's opinion whether he was in conflict by consulting with.
I think you already got the answer to that.
So he
The
said
answer
no.
was no.
Okay.
Okay, move on.
So, Mr. Swayze, can you give, given your ruling, you seem to agree with the mayor and the legal team that anything councillors say about this West Tower project may jeopardize the Insular lawsuit. You said in your...
No.
You seem to say that anything that we say could
The answer is
jeopardize.
no.
No? Okay.
If it was said that staff acted appropriately in disqualifying Inzola, that's perfectly all right.
No, that's not what I'm asking you.
So, Councillor,
You're
please
saying
don't
that-
debate.
You're
Ask your
saying that
next
I'm charged
question.
with, that I'm hurting the lawsuit by...
Councillor, you're debating the issue.
Okay.
Please go to your next
All right.
question.
So, Mr. Swayze, I actually put a little example here, is this, about the conflict of interest. It's, when I think of you going to the lawyer, could you not have gone to another independent lawyer to assist you to get an opinion?
There's no better. There's no better than the
Okay, all right.
council in the matter.
Well, to me, I see this as you going to
Councillor,
the...
I don't want you debating it. Go to your
Okay.
next question.
So are you familiar with the council? We already know about the code of office and that you know what I just read to you what the oath states. Well, I don't want to get into these questions where I'm keeping in mind Mr. Zwick's comments. Okay. Let's go to number 4. Do you recall my disclosure to you in our interview on October 14th, where Councillor Moore and I went to meet with the Minister of Municipal Affairs in 2013 regarding this whole matter that we were concerned about, that I felt, and so did some other members of the council, that we were kind of inhibited from carrying out our sworn duties, and so we went to. You remember we had that discussion,
Yes,
and we went,
yes.
and basically I got a copy there, and the response was from the minister that this basically it's I can't get involved. It's a municipal matter. It's your problem, and you deal with it. So you remember that was the. So basically, the minister told us that you guys have to figure out how to do your job and deal with this matter yourselves.
I remember the discussion.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Swayze, basically, what I was trying to find out from you was whether any of the emails that were exchanged between myself and the manager and the mayor and the media was copied. I was trying to find out if any of those were actually properly marked confidential. And I believe you said, in every case, you said, no, they were not. There was not. There was no, they were not marked confidential, basically.
I think that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished, and I'm just going to leave now. You carry on with your debate.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sprovieri. Councillor Miles, would you allow Mr. Swayze to make his presentation before you get on the board? Mr. Swayze, the floor is
Yes,
yours.
Madam Mayor, this will be very short, but what I wanted to say is that it's an unusual report. I'm relying on an opinion from another lawyer that I can't talk about in public. So if you really want to question that and want to hear some full remarks on that, we really have to go in camera. I'm also relying on a closed session where there was a report filed from the legal department. I can't talk about that either because it was in closed session, but it was very graphic in its caution to Councillor Sprovieri, and I'm relying on that as well. The bottom line is that the Code of Conduct, and I'll read it, and it lists personnel matters, labor, litigation. Members have a responsibility to keep such information confidential, to safeguard the corporation's interest and reputation, and I highlighted this in my report, and to uphold disclosure rules to prevent personal gain or advantage to others. That is what Councillor Sprovieri did not do. He did not uphold the disclosure rules, and it did have, in the opinion of the external counsel, it did have a deleterious effect on the city and on the lawsuit.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
I think that's it, yeah.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you. I'm going to borrow this, if you don't mind, because I did share mine, and I would like to go in camera later. But my first question through you, Madam Mayor, is to the clerk. When a member of council deals with a conflict of interest, are they in fact allowed to speak to the issue before they leave the room? And if you can't answer that, I'll ask the question through to Mr. Swayze. I believe Rob Ford was actually removed from office for doing that very act.
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, all I'm going to cite is what's in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And if members will recall, it was either a council meeting or a committee meeting. I have said this repeatedly, and in fact said this probably no later than 2 weeks ago to members of council or committee at that point in time. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act is very clear that if a member has a conflict, and under the Act it's declared as a pecuniary conflict, which is financial, it can be direct or indirect, they cannot and shall not participate, vote, or influence.
Okay, thank you.
That is what the basic essence of the Act says.
Thank you. My next question then is to Mr. Swayze. And I do think that it's unfortunate for Councillor Sprovieri that he in fact has actually reinforced the charges under the Act that has been brought against him by actually copying all of this information that in fact once again breaches Code of Conduct and breaches disclosure of in-camera information by printing it and circulating it. He is once again breaching those. So, Mr. Swayze, I would ask for your counsel on that because it's the same information that he was told not to use and distribute in the past. And I guess my other statement that what he's actually done also is he's provided members of council with a letter, and he cited from it, which in fact brings Councillor Sprovieri, Moore, Sanderson, and Callahan, who aren't here, and Councillor Gibson. He's provided information that they too have in fact breached the disclosure and Code of Conduct, and in fact has provided statements in here that has been signed by all of them that is probably libelous and damaging, and has given their statements in writing to that effect. So for members of council, especially those that this letter is written on, if I was you, I would be taking a closer look at this, because in fact it does breach disclosure, it breaches code, and makes statements against staff statements and allegations that are libelous. And I just think this whole situation is really unfortunate. Mr. Swayze, at the time that you were doing starting the investigation, we had you come into a session with the Council Organization Committee because we were looking at the overall Code of Conduct and the appropriateness of that. And at that time, I did have a conversation with you in regards to continuous and ongoing breaches of code and disclosure. And that, in fact, for a period of, I don't know how many years, probably 5 years anyway, or more, that council, our legal counsel, had to continuously, on an ongoing basis, warn members of council about breach of code. And they were doing that as a result of communications that were being shared in a public way. So your investigation here, did you go into anything about the broader subject of breach in the case of Councillor Sprovieri? Because even though the mayor brought this to you out of desperation, she had continuously provided warnings, as had our legal counsel. Nobody, well, that's not true. I think some members of council would like to find others at fault, but this was a situation that was totally out of hand, and our legal counsel and our staff and some members of council are totally fed up with it and at our wits' end with it and unable to deal with it for the very reason that you saw today.
To answer your question, through you, Madam Mayor, I didn't need to go beyond what the complaint provided to me. I have no reservations or doubts in what I've written in that report. You didn't give me a lot of details about these additional breaches, but I felt I could just confine myself to the complaint.
Okay. So with
But,
that...
Madam Mayor, may I read you, the clerk briefly summarize the Conflict of Interest Act? I have it in front of me. I'd like to just read it so that we all understand. This is if you have a conflict, and he does. Shall, prior to any consideration of the matter at the meeting, disclose the interest and the general nature thereof, shall not take part in the discussion of or vote on any question in respect to the matter, and shall not attempt in any way, whether before, during, or after the meeting, to influence the voting on any such question. That's what the Act says. I just thought you should have the full answer.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's the end of my questions. I would like to go in camera, however, and get further advice from Mr. Swayze.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I too think we should go in camera. But before we do, in regards to the letter, I see it's a draft. Or a draft, and I'm not even sure why my name and Councillor Callahan's is scratched off of it. I couldn't tell you that right now. I'm not sure whether I don't think it's a breach. It's a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs asking for help. But I want to ask the clerk a question, just so I understand what's going on. My understanding is when you declare a conflict of interest, you cannot speak to the audience, you declare a conflict to get out. But I didn't hear Councillor Sprovieri declare a conflict of interest. Did he?
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, I have no record of the councillor declaring a conflict at this meeting on this
So if
item.
he felt that he didn't have a conflict of interest and he had every right to speak, I understand what's been said, but it was said that he spoke and then declared a conflict and spoke, but he didn't. So I just want to make that clear. He did not declare it. Councillor Moore and I declared on ours, but it's up to every individual what they want to do. Is that correct? None of us can tell the council member to declare a conflict of interest.
That's correct. It's up to the individual member because they're the ones that know their circumstances the best in terms of whether or not they comply with the act or not.
So Councillor Sprovieri chose to speak and then leave the room, as the mayor then a month or so ago chose to not participate but didn't declare a conflict of interest. So I'm just clearing up that's what happened here. Am I correct? There's no conflict of interest. He did not declare a conflict of interest. He chose not to participate in the voting or the discussion afterwards.
As cited by the Integrity Commissioner in terms of the provisions of the Act, the councillor has not declared a conflict of interest
Right.
in keeping with the requirements of the Act.
Right. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Clerk, can I just ask a question? Do you want us to deal with this report that's here on this table before we go in camera, or would it make more sense to deal with it after we come out?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the request to go in camera would be to discuss some of the documents that may have been, or the opinion that Mr. Swayze had requested, because they are of a solicitor client, or litigation privilege attaches to those documents. So the in-camera is not to discuss the open report, but it's to discuss those matters that Mr. Swayze may have looked at to help him come to his conclusions in those matters that are subject to litigation privilege or solicitor client privilege. I just wanted to be clear on that.
I am obligated, or you are obligated to make available to the public any report that I write. So that should be clear. And we've discussed it here openly tonight, or today, and we could discuss it in camera. That's not necessarily a report for me.
So I think the answer is we should deal with the report and then go in camera, make a decision on the receipt of the report and or any other activities, and then go in camera to talk about the additional information that you cannot disclose. Is that right?
My advice to you, Mayor Jeffrey, and to council would be that this is the one item, which is item I-2, and if there is a need by this council to go into closed session to receive advice that may be subject to solicitor-client privilege or a litigation matter, then council can well do that, but the final disposition of this item should remain until that is dealt with. So
in other words, afterwards. Okay. Okay.
And the vote has to come back here to open session.
Okay. So is it the will of council to go through the rest of the agenda and just leave this one item for us to deal with in camera? Or do you want to take a break now? Back from our recess, and we're dealing with item 1-2, which is the complaint against Councillor Sprovieri by Robert Swayze, the Integrity Commissioner. Councillor Miles, you're still on the board. Do you want?
Yeah, thank you very much. If I could ask Mr. Swayze to come forward, please. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Swayze, for sharing with us the information in camera as it relates to this matter as well. I wanted to go back to your report and your findings. So if you could simply review your findings, the conclusion that you came to, and the penalties that you believe should be imposed.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I thought long and hard about it. It seems to me it's a very serious offense. It may cause serious harm to the municipality. On the other hand, I've never had a complaint about Councillor Sprovieri before. It's his first offense, so I suggested 60 days. I could live with 30. I don't think it should be 3 months. But that's my recommendation, and it's, obviously it's totally within your jurisdiction to decide what to suspend his pay in the amount or not at all.
Well, thank you. Madam Mayor, I'm going to, I know Councillor Moore has moved receipt, and I would also move the recommendations in the report made by the Integrity Commissioner. I think the main reason why I believe that we should be supporting the recommendations and penalties is quite simply because this kind of breach of disclosure has been ongoing, even though it was only the last few breaches that the mayor did bring to the attention of the Integrity Commissioner. Every member of council, I think, is aware of the amount of warnings that we have had to have, as members of council in regards to Councillor Sprovieri's around disclosure of in-camera matters. And it's a really serious matter. This isn't something that any of us should be taking lightly. And I think if I thought that by simply receiving the report that would bring an end to the breach, I would be happy. But I don't believe it will, and I think it's really unfortunate. And today was just a good indication of the fact that Councillor Sprovieri refuses to abide by the rules that are laid down through the Municipal Act for us as members of council, not only through our code of conduct, but through the Municipal Act as well. The documents that were shared with us today, which are public information, again breach disclosure, breach code, and actually implicate other members of council in breaches of code of conduct and disclosure. So it's for that reason that I'm going to ask council to support the recommendations of the Integrity Commissioner, with the hope that this will be a lesson for each and every member of council. It's time to stop. It's time to quit using the media as a forum for us to fight our differences or disclose our differences. This is the forum. This table is where members of council should be airing their differences and opinions and having the debate, not through the media and certainly not through disclosure of in-camera matters. Personally, I have a huge discomfort every time an in-camera matter is brought before us as to where that information is going to go when I leave the meeting, and it shouldn't be like that. So it's with that I'm going to move the recommendation. And I would ask for a recorded vote, Madam Mayor. It's time that this stopped.
Councillor Bowman.
I think Mr. Swayze.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to say, Mr. Zurich pointed out to me, I didn't give you complete advice on what your powers are. You can suspend remuneration up to 90 days, or you can produce a reprimand against him. And that's just reading a reprimand in council. That I forgot to tell you about the reprimand, but that's the limit of your jurisdiction to impose a sanction. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is the first time I've ever dealt with anything like this, of course. And I don't know, is 60 days a common penalty that would be given to somebody for a breach like this, or can you?
It's all over the map. It's fairly new, the Integrity Commissioner. It's only started in 2006, but there's 1 week to 3 months.
Okay, just my personal view, coming from my own business and working in that sector for many years, is this, to me, and again, this is just my opinion, it seems pretty extreme for a first-time offense, 27 years, to take someone's pay away for 60 days. And again, I don't know if that's standard. I don't know whether there's a middle ground between a reprimand and 30 days as opposed to 60 days, but my personal opinion is that, I don't know, I just find 60 days is an awful lot of money to take from somebody for a first offense.
I said that I could live with 30 days, but just felt it was a pretty serious
Okay.
offense.
Yes.
Councillor Miles again.
Can we actually, as a reprimand, refuse Councillor Sprovieri's admittance into in-camera matters?
No, can you exclude him from in-camera matters? No.
No, so that's not an option.
The clerk is a better person to answer that than me, but I don't believe so.
So we can't remove them from the meeting, so then we don't have to worry. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
I tend to agree with Councillor Bowman on this, and I'd like to explore what you mean by reprimand. What would that entice? Just a reprimand would be what?
Well, you read, I draft for you a statement the council would read in open council.
So we could do a reprimand
Reprimanding him.
without a loss of pay?
Without any loss of pay, yes. That's within your jurisdiction.
You know, I feel a little bit like Councillor Moore, or Councillor Miles, and with your concerns about in-camera stuff, but I don't want to go here thinking that Councillor Sprovieri is the only one that's leaking stuff out of the camera. I believe it's happened in many cases. So it'd be unfair to characterize, and over the years, not just this term of council, it'd be unfair to characterize Councillor Sprovieri as being the only one in this case, but although I'm not jeopardizing anything by saying that, but certainly not disclosing any things. Councillor Sprovieri, I've worked with him for 24 years now, and never known him to ever do anything like this. You know, we have to be careful what we say sometimes, and as you pointed out, you rightly pointed out. So I do agree with Councillor Bowman in the sense that 60 days is a pretty harsh, in my mind, for a first-time offender. I'll listen to what everybody else has to say, and then we can see.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a reprimand is another option.
Yes.
The reprimand, I guess, is a statement that the council makes that they denounces whoever's action.
It's a formal statement made by council indicating that he has breached the code of conduct.
Right. So assuming he gets a reprimand, let's just say we don't dock pay. Are there measures in place for, and I'm just generally speaking, let's just say we reprimand somebody. Are there any measures in place for any subsequent offenses? And are there any restrictions or conditions going forward, or any ways to prevent this from happening, or does it stop at the reprimand and we deal with any other? Again, I'm not speaking about Councillor Sprovieri, I'm just speaking generally. Anything going forward? Are we dealing a case by case, or will we, if somebody does the offense the second time, do we refer back to? Is it isolated from the first?
There's three of them there. There's only me. But obviously, if I received another complaint for the same type of action, then I would recommend a higher penalty.
So in the reprimand, is there wording in place that we, is it?
You could do that. You could put in there that he does it again, it's 90 days, or 30 days, or 60 days, whatever you want.
So that's it, up to the council to decide what the wording is, right?
I've made the finding, so that gives you the jurisdiction to penalize.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. A couple of comments. First of all, part of the Integrity Commissioner's findings had nothing to do with in-camera, to do with an email that was not in camera. So, I hear Councillor Miles. However, I don't really see that as an option. There's two things I know about Councillor Sprovieri. He has intense love for this city that he's called home for probably more than 50 years. And he places incredible value on his reputation and protecting that. And I don't think anybody around this table or anybody who knows him would ever question that. I moved receipt of the report. That means simply that it needs to be voted on in terms of receipt and not deal with the penalty that has been identified or recommended in the report. In terms of a reprimand, I think it's been pretty public. There's been already a front page story in the newspaper, and there will no doubt be another story in the newspaper. I think if Councillor Sprovieri had any question before in terms of whether or not some of the statements made and information shared was putting the municipality at risk, he certainly got the message now. A recommendation from the Integrity Commissioner to dock 60 days' pay, I think, is a pretty powerful statement. And so my recommendation is that, and it's on the floor, is that we receive the report. I don't know whether receiving that report precludes council, because I really just don't want to open up the other issues in it, precludes us from putting together a letter of reprimand or dealing with that separate and apart from your recommendation. I guess the clerk or legal can advise on that, but I think that this was a wake-up call for all of us. And Councillor Sprovieri, I think, who honestly was following up on a question that was posed to him by the press. Thank you.
Councillor Miles.
I honestly thought that Councillor Sprovieri understood that his actions were in breach of code. Then I could accept a reprimand. But a person who accepts the fact that his actions are in breach does not come to the council meeting today armed with a document that is full of the same kind of breach that got him in trouble in the first place, and has included additional information as well. So if he really got it, and he wasn't going to do it again, he wouldn't have come with this. So it doesn't matter how you shake this situation out. Councillor Sprovieri has to understand what his responsibilities are and who his responsibilities are to. And he can't keep breaching the code of conduct. So I don't believe there's anything in the procedural bylaw. Mr. Fay, if Councillor Moore has received the report, I can move the recommendation still. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, to Council, I've already quietly given my advice to the Mayor. I interpreted when Councillor Moore moved her motion to receive, it was essentially to receive and take no action, because there was a clear recommendation from the Integrity Commissioner. Therefore, it's receiving to take no action. So I advise the Mayor that that would be the first motion on the floor, the first main motion. Your motion to essentially adopt the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations, I'm interpreting as contrary at this point. So if the motion to receive, and this is my advice to the Mayor only, if that does not carry, then that would be a proper motion that could be moved on the floor.
So an amendment, any amendment to the motion that imposed a penalty would be contrary?
I'm basing my advice through you, Mayor Jeffrey, on what I understood the intent when Councillor Moore moved her motion was just to receive it and not do anything more, not impose any penalty at all.
Yeah, I understand that, but oftentimes motions are amended with an amendment which could have a penalty or whatever without. You know what I'm asking, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, the convention of this council is when council moves a motion to receive something, they're just receiving the information and not doing anything with it, not taking a disposition one way or another. So again, my advice is, as I understood the intent of Councillor Moore's motion was to take no action, just receive the information. The motion that you've placed is to take action in keeping with the Integrity Commissioner's report, which is in itself contrary to the main motion moved, which was to take no action. So my advice to the Mayor is if she takes Councillor Moore's motion as the first motion, then your motion is contrary and cannot be considered unless Councillor Moore's motion fails.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a recorded vote on all motions today? Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mr. Swayze, again, I just want to ask a question. If Councillor Moore said we move this, it doesn't preclude us from then again asking for a reprimand as the punishment. Is that?
You mean later?
Yes. Or even today after a...
The clerk again would have to advise. I would think it would be bringing up a matter. I don't know whether you'd be able to do that, but in your procedural bylaw.
So, Mayor Jeffrey, if I could help members of council, what you're asking for is a reconsideration. So if council makes a decision today and council wishes to revisit that decision at a future meeting, it's a reconsideration, and there are rules in the procedure bylaw, as council is well aware of how to deal with that.
Okay, so, and my second question, sir, is if a reprimand were to be put together, in that reprimand, can it be clearly defined to Councillor Sprovieri that this is a strong, stern warning, and the next time it happens, there can be 60 days, or it will be 60 days, or whatever? I'm just trying to think. I mean, in every other area, you know, you've got warnings that have to be followed. You've got follow-up. You've got you know, in any human relations case. And again, I just 60 days is a lot to me.
No, I've never been asked this question before, and what you're saying is council would pass a reprimand and would also decide to deduct X days of salary in the event that the integrity commissioner makes a second finding. It probably sounds okay to me, but I'd like to look at it.
Okay, could you repeat that for me, because there was a conversation going on behind me as well.
What I understood you to say was that can we pass a referendum? Can we pass a reprimand? Can we pass a reprimand which stipulates that in the event the integrity commissioner finds a second offense, that council will deduct X number of days from his salary?
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to hear the clerk, I'd like to hear the solicitor on that, but I think that's probably okay. Council can do pretty much anything it wants, once I make a finding.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do some request to Councillor Miles. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in your motion is to dock pay, which I think might be considering, you know, this is a first-time offense that it might be, in my opinion, a little bit of excessive. But at the same time, I don't. I think. Well, I'm requesting that we could, maybe if you can amend and just put the reprimand in there, not for the simple reason that we don't want to, you know, ignore the integrity commissioner's recommendation or suggestions. So that's a request to you if you're able to do that.
Councillor Miles.
It would appear that Councillor Moore's motion stands. But we could request that she does allow for a reprimand in her recommendation. My intent here is not to penalize Councillor Sprovieri. I just want him to stop. I want to restore order and dignity and respect back to this council in whatever way it's going to take. And part of that is respecting the rules of office in which we are expected to abide by. So if it's a reprimand, then it's a reprimand, but it's got to stop. It just has to stop.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I've just drafted something based on the conversation, and I'll read it as I think it captures the conversation. That the motion to receive be amended to provide that Councillor Sprovieri be issued a reprimand which puts Councillor Sprovieri on notice that any further breach will cause this council to impose up to a 60-day suspension. So, prepared, I guess I can move that.
That's to replace this one?
I don't know what that one
That
says.
was receipt.
Well, no, I'm moving receipt of the report.
Yeah.
This is an amendment to the receipt.
So it's,
Motion, I'll move this.
this is amendment to your original
It's an
motion.
amendment to my original motion. Somebody could second that.
Okay. So I have no more speakers, but as the person who launched the complaint, I did want to speak. So I want to thank you, Mr. Swayze, for the work that you did. I don't know if you recall the first time we met, but I hadn't been sworn in. And at that time, we were talking about some embarrassing emails that had gone through the city at that time that Mr. Sprovieri was a party to. I've been a politician for 24 years, and I too have never seen anything ever as I have seen in the last year as the mayor. It's shocking. And I have to say, I'm not surprised. I knew there were breaches before I even got here. We, as elected officials, have a fiduciary responsibility, and I, as mayor, have to try and bring bad behavior to the front, to expose it, to tell people to stop doing it. Because this, as you stated, this is a very serious offense. This is in regards to a $28 million lawsuit. So, you know, I think that when I launched this complaint in the summer, it wasn't because I took no pleasure in doing it. In fact, I spoke to the councillor multiple times and said, if you don't stop doing this, I'm going to have to launch a complaint formally. And he told me, you do what you have to do, Mayor, and I'll do what I have to do. So I don't know that this public shaming is going to be enough to change behavior, but you know, I think that what you said in your conclusions to me are very sobering. I also find that Councillor Sprovieri knew or ought to have known that copying the 3 emails to the media would be detrimental to the interests of the City of Brampton in this lawsuit. Like other members of council, he was advised not to discuss the Inzola matter in public. I find that he did not uphold disclosure rules as required by the code and accordingly was in contravention of it. I realize that people around this table feel some discomfort about putting a penalty on their colleagues, but the public is watching us. And I got elected on accountability and transparency and openness. I took no pleasure, as I said, to take this issue to this ultimate conclusion. This is a disturbing pattern of behavior. I know it is not a one-time incident. I didn't launch this frivolously, and John and I sat as seatmates for 12 years. I would never have done this if I thought there was another route. So this council can decide to minimize the penalty, but we have a very serious issue on our hands. And unfortunately, Mr. Swayze, I think we're going to be talking to you again in the future. Thank you. So the motion I have now is, Councillor Miles, you want to record a vote on this one as well? Okay. So the first part is moved by it's all moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Wellens, that the report from Robert Swayze, the Integrity Commissioner, dated October 22nd to the City Council meeting of October 28, 2015, regarding the complaint against Councillor John Sprovieri, finding that Councillor John Sprovieri contravened the Code of Conduct for a member of the Council, be received. And that Councillor Sprovieri be issued a reprimand which puts Councillor Sprovieri on notice that any further breach will cause his council to impose an up to 60-day pay suspension. This council, sorry. Okay, this council to impose up to a 60-day pay suspension. A recorded vote has been called. Would you like to put yourself on the board? Councillor Dillon.
Should it be, just a suggestion, there's a difference between will and could. I don't know if that makes a difference, that it's an automatic will or could.
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, to council, I think the motion is suggesting what could, may, or may not happen in the future. So that would be up to a complaint, an investigation, and a report by an integrity commissioner.
I'm just saying the council will do that. I'm just saying, which implies that it will definitely be when it breaches it. I'm just saying could. Depends on what could means to council is.
That's right.
Could.
Are you asking the mover to change?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just my suggestion. I don't know. Just something you
It's
want.
will.
You want to leave it at will or could?
It still provides an I think the language still
Are you putting yourself on the board, please?
I think the language, it says up to 60 days, it would still require a conversation around this table and decisive action. So what if you want could, will, may, I think it all achieves the same thing because it's up to, and so it would require us to make a decision on that.
Okay, no more speakers on the board?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification on the 60 days. The Act talks to a maximum of 90 days. So by inserting 60 days, you would be inserting less than what the maximum under the Act would otherwise allow you to decide up until, or up to.
Okay, no more questions? Recorded vote's been called.
Recorded vote on the motion as amended has been called. All in favor of the motion, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor of the motion is Councillor Gibson, Councillor Miles, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Medeiros, Mayor Jeffrey, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Willens, Councillor Moore. Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously 10-0.
You know, Mr. Clerk, we're now at the public question period.